Before we get started with the Haventree Parent Podcast today, I wanted to inform those of you watching or listening to the YouTube channel with the video that I deleted my part of the video for the podcast today. We have plans in place that never happens again because it doesn't, work well without having both sides. So you should hopefully see some interesting clips that we're gonna splice in for my parts where I get 5 minutes to say something, and that should hopefully just be humorous and fun as we talk about a good topic in relation to our continuing series on homeschooling. So I will see you on the next adventure, and listen to this podcast. It's gonna be great. Enjoy. Good morning, and welcome to the Haventree Parent Podcast, where we get a chance to talk to something that's important to us and to you before the kids wake up.
Today we're going to talk about choosing a homeschool curriculum, which is something that we've gotten quite a few questions about.
Right, so like she said, we're going to be talking about choosing a homeschool curriculum and how to understand what's in it, what you will be required to look at as a parent, and what the kids will be getting taught on. So that's the fun choice. I think a lot of people start jumping into this and they're like, where do I even begin? How do I know what to do? And how do I know what to pick for my kid?
Yeah. So I think that the most important thing for us, we actually started using formal homeschool curriculums before we ever went to a homeschool convention. So we live very near one of the biggest major homeschool conventions that goes, I think it's like 6 or 8 places across the country. It's huge. And it's amazing. And I think it was, we've only gone twice, right?
I think so.
And we didn't obviously go this summer. So we've, been homeschooling we've just started our 5th year. So we were a couple years in before we ever attended a homeschool convention. Certainly at this point, it's not in the cards. I think there's probably not any anywhere in the country at the moment, thanks to coronavirus. But certainly if it's something that you're thinking about homeschooling, or you are a homeschooler, but you've never gone, I would totally recommend it. I think that it's amazing. There's amazing speakers, and I think it's really nice to just be able to put your hands on books, on curriculum, and see.
Right, because in this online culture where you have to look through all of the different resources and everything, you're trying to get into the book and you can't, because all it's going to show you is the cover page, because they don't want to show you the content, or
Right.
they show you one example page, and that's not enough to know what actually is going on throughout the entire social studies book, or whatever curriculum you're looking into.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, it's definitely I think when I went down there the second time with you, it was I don't know, it was cool because
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a big convention center, and there's probably like 500 booths or something, and each one has a different specialty. Like there's the science booths that have cool little trinkety games, and like the box mail package type setup stuff. So you can have different things sent to your house, and you can do those with activities with the kids, which I think we're looking at doing something like that this year, since we're not going anywhere and need some more little fun things for them to do. But yeah, no, there's lots of different booths that are just set up at the convention center that have all the different varieties of music. I lost my train of thought.
Languages, there's coding, there's lots of different science and science, robotics, cooking. There's all kinds of cool elective stuff, and there's every company of homeschooling that you can possibly think of.
Right. And
plus
it's pretty
9,200. I mean, it's amazing.
Spread out, so everything's nicely divided. So
yeah, and then there's also lots of other cool stuff. There's people, one of my favorites is always the cool kitchen gadgets. She has all kinds of cool. It's not like Pampered Chef, but it's kind of that idea, I guess. And I think that is so cool, to see just the different stuff she has. But it is something that's amazing and worth the time and money in the future. Obviously, for this year, that's pretty much not possible in most places. But I would say a lot of publishers of homeschool curriculums will still do like little local events, which is something that I learned at the Homeschool Convention that I didn't know. So, like, for example, we use Abeka, and Abeka has like sellers who go around to different like hotels and things like that with their, spread of their curriculum. And they have little local weekends for you to be able to go and see the curriculum. And that is something that they still do, obviously, because it's a much smaller situation. It, is not as likely to be a potential risk of contracting coronavirus or whatever. But, it is something that would be a good way if you're considering a certain curriculum and you aren't sure, you can't decide. I would certainly recommend contacting whoever the publisher is and seeing, is there a child jumping above us? What is happening? Do you hear that
I don't
noise?
think so. I thought it was the table.
I have no idea. It's very annoying.
This table has like a wobble. I need to get it fixed.
Yeah. Anyway, so if there's a curriculum that you're thinking about, but you would really like to see, I would encourage you to just contact the company, because more than likely they very well may have a thing in your area, or there'll be somebody coming through soon. So that you can just put hands on the curriculum and kind of look through it and see if it's appropriate for your child, especially if you have a child that's very advanced or is struggling in a certain subject. For Adri, the first year we went, we were trying to decide what grade level to put her in for math. There was a particular style that I liked better as far as curriculum, but it wasn't at the level that I wanted it to be, and or that was going to keep her engaged or challenged. So, we spent a lot of time looking through the actual scope of the textbooks for different grades to decide what was appropriate for her, because we don't necessarily follow just a grade level across the board typically. And so again, that's something where just being able to put your hands on the book is really the best way to do it. Certainly talk to your friends if you have people that you know in church, or, just in your friend group that homeschool, ask them to look at their books. They wouldn't have an issue with that at all, most likely, and if you have a friend like us, has a big family, we've got 4 grades covered for you. So,
Right.
Plus a lot of we still have a lot of our textbooks from previous years. We still have some of the worksheets and stuff, because I do keep some of the kids' stuff, and so I wouldn't have had a problem letting you look through prior years of schoolwork that's been done for you to have an idea of what a book looks like, or what the content is. So, certainly, ask around if you have friends at homeschool. There's lots of ways to get your hands on a book just to look at it and get a feel for it. But I do think that that's important.
So one of the cool things about going to the convention was being able to look at the curriculums and hold on to the books and just flip through them and see what the differences were, because usually Katie had always gone through and picked out which curriculum she thought was best for each grade. And I was just the final approval, that sounds fine to me, before jumping into those. But actually being able to go through them was nice, because then it was I could see the work and sort of refresh my mind of oh yeah, I remember doing that in second grade or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was good to see that it was something that, I don't know, I would be able to understand, and just see the level of effort that the kids were going to have to jump into, and make sure it wasn't too much for them, because each of us assess our kids a little differently anyway. We know their skill levels and we know their personalities, but also knowing just the amount of work that you're going to put in front of them and what you're going to have to help guide them through. You want it to be something that's, appropriate from what your perspective is as well.
Yeah.
So that way you're not giving them a big chunk of here's this 5-page thing, go read it.
And that is really when you started to get more involved in that conversation. Before that, you kind of were just supportive, which is, I appreciate you being supportive. But once you got to look at them with me, it was sort of the lights started turning on, or things started clicking, and it was oh, Yeah, I think this is better than that. And like we were able to have those conversations, which is
Right,
really
right. Because I
nice.
think most of it was like I was focused on the extra things we'd be able to do with the
Right.
flexibility of time. I
Right.
was like, cool, we'll be able
Like,
to
okay, we're going to do math. We're going
we'll
to do first grade math. I
we'll
don't really quite care
we'll
which first grade
right, right.
math
We'll
book.
cram the basics in, and then we'll
Right.
get to do the extra stuff.
Right.
So that sounds great to me.
But the truth is, there's big differences in the way that different curriculums do math.
And do the
There's,
basics, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that is important to consider those. And, you know, realistically, you should be thinking about a lot more than just the cost of the curriculum. One of the things that I didn't think about or really, you know, like meditate on, so to speak, early on is that there's kind of a spectrum of ideologies as far as homeschooling goes. So if you know, have been around homeschooling for very long, you hear, you know, things like Montessori and Charlotte Mason, and lots of Waldorf. There's lots of different ideologies. So if you kind of envision it like as a spectrum, on one side you have a very strict, regimented schooling system that is, or school homeschool curriculum that is most like, and most mirrors what's going to be done in the school setting, be that a private school or public school. And that spectrum then, if that's on one end, goes all the way to the other end of unschooling, which is a very different way of doing school, and often may use very little or no curriculum depending on the family and the type of unschooling that they're following. And so all of those other things, like I mentioned, Montessori and all the rest, there's like unit-based and project-based learning methods. All of those kind of fall in the spectrum somewhere. And so I think that to some extent that will help parents kind of figure out what makes sense. So, you know, for me, I like as much structure as possible. For me, the more structure, the more I feel accountable, the more that I am motivated to stay on track. And Josh, you even learned this, you know, the other day when we were getting things set up for school for us and our kids. You know, we use Abeka this year. We're actually using Abeka 100%. And there's lots of different reasons for that. But we're using Abeka 100% this year. It's the first time we've used the same curriculum for all our kids, and it's the first year we've ever used one curriculum for all the subjects.
Which is sort of good, and it'll be interesting to see if we stick to that or if we rotate out again and go to something else.
We've never done the same thing 2 years in a row. Like we've never, you know, like, so last year Adri did Abeka for language arts, but she used other curriculums for other subjects. And so obviously we're using Abeka for language arts again and everything else. So, you know, but it's never looked exactly the same 2 years in a row. But Abeka is...
And I think Abeka is the one, like, I've helped out, like, loading their online class. So, like, they have, like, a teacher video that they watch. And I think that's always, like, the trickiest part for me is because their website isn't entirely clear as to, like, how to get to where the videos are. It's better than the other ones. But
better than some of the other ones we've used.
But I still think there's a lot of improvement that could be done there. But I'm not IT either, so I don't know how all that needs to be, you know, tucked away. But.
So for us, Abeka has really been nice because it's all laid out, you know, and I think that the other nice thing about Abeka is you can kind of just like get some of the workbooks and just do some of the workbooks and call it a day. But they also have like teacher guides that go with them so that you can literally like work through a whole day as if you were a teacher in a classroom teaching them. I've never really used the teacher guides because I like to teach the kids in a way that makes sense to them. So like I'll use a teacher guide for like the first week and then I'm like, and I don't think that this is very helpful. But I do think that like it is useful to kind of see how to structure. Like there's a lot of good suggestions in some of those books as far as like how to structure your day, or even suggestions about like what to start the day with and different things like that, that are sometimes beneficial, you know, to read and see what other people who know more than you do think. And then if those work for your kids, great. And if not, you know, great. too. I don't know. Like,
Right. Well, and it's interesting that you
there's no
say
harm
that
in
because, like, I don't know, I've seen like some of the guides, and I'm like, why are they going in this order, or why are they doing this thing
Yeah.
this way? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. To me, I would order it differently, but I think,
Right.
and maybe that's where Adrian and I are on that same page, where like I should probably
Yeah.
just train Adrian and be like, okay, here's the curriculum, we have to get through this. This is the process that I'm thinking will do it, and then
Yeah.
like that might actually click with her,
Yeah.
and it could, but it's always hard to tell because I mean I know she needs just repetition,
Yeah.
and she'll get it, but. And then the other kids are, also doing a good job. And this is the first year for Jay, so all
Yeah,
those things
very
we're
different.
learning along the way. But
Yeah. So
or I'm going to be learning along the way. Katie already knows what to expect, but I'm going to be figuring this out. So.
yeah. So I think that is something that, like, if you're really struggling, it's worth looking up sort of homeschooling ideologies and kind of figuring out where you fit or where you want to be, where you think you'll be most comfortable. I think the thing that's really important to keep in mind with that is to be realistic about who you are and who your kids are, not like who you want to be, because like there's a part of me that would love to be a very creative, free-spirited, go with the weather, go with the whatever is happening right now, and kind of base our schooling that way of like, oh, the kids are really interested in this week, or we're going to do a weather-based study because it's tornado season or whatever. Like, I don't know. I just am not that person. Like, I am not creative in that way. Like, I am not motivated in that way. Like, coming up with new ideas is stressful for me. It's not something that just
has to say in the guide, take your kids outside to read under the tree.
I mean, we can do stuff like that, but like, I am not the type of mom, as much as I want to be. I desperately would love to be this person, but I am not the mom that can like just decide this week what next week's school is going to be and make it up as I go, and do it well, right? And there are moms that are amazing and can do that, and I'm jealous. And I'm sure that they think like, man, I wish that I could be a more like organized and straight-laced mom. And and so they're like wishing that they had my skills, and I'm wishing that I had theirs, right? So I think that it's important to also be happy with yourself, but to be realistic about who you are when you're picking a homeschool curriculum if you're struggling. Because there are, like, Abeka is way more work and time commitment than is required to do homeschooling well. Like, we love Abeka, and I think that it's what works best for our family right now. That's why we chose it. But you don't have to do Abeka. You don't have to do all of the things in Abeka or a similar rigorous program
Like
to be
said,
doing
we've
what
done
your kids need.
the a la carte style to get the education level that we thought was best. So, I mean, if you have to go through an a la carte type of setting, then, as long as you get the basic classes each year, each grade, whatever, you should be able to find your course and go with that. I was also going to say, there's probably somewhere a percentage of homeschoolers that are homeschooling dads that are home doing that. Because, I mean, they're definitely in an education role as well. So they could be out there having the same struggle and wanting to be different. So.
Right. And I think that made me think of something else, and I totally lost my train of thought. I think also knowing your kids, and not pushing them to the next grade because you think that they should be doing X, Y, Z. So another really easy example of this is in Christian circles. I'm going to point to Abeka again because it's something we're familiar with, but it is typically considered to be at least a year ahead in academics as far as reading is concerned. So,
and I think most of them say that they are on the edge
depends.
or have an area of a niche where they're a little bit more
education like some curriculums are really math, strong.
Right.
And, so I think it's important to know your curriculum and know your kid. If you have a kid that's struggling with reading, you may want to go back a grade, and not because they're dumb, but because the curriculum is expecting too much of your child.
Already stepped up from public standards,
and that's
or something.
Okay.
So,
there's nothing wrong with that, and I think having a conversation with your kid about that of this number doesn't mean anything. You are a third grader. The other thing to really keep in mind with that, though, is once they get into about third grade, they're going to have like history and science textbooks, second or third grade, I guess. They're going to have history and science textbooks too. So if you're using a curriculum that is ahead academically in reading, you may also want to consider moving them back a year in any other textbook subjects. So particularly like history and science, if you have a kid that struggles in reading, who's dyslexic, who whatever, having again, we're having intruders today. I don't know what's happening. I bet they're opening the door and then realizing what we're down here doing. They're like, oh, better shut it. But you know, that again, in order for them to be successful in history or in science, just backing off a little bit, there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make them not a third grader.
Right.
That makes them a successful third grader who's going to be able to grasp the history concepts or the science concepts without stressing over the reading. When you're doing history, you want them to be learning history, not frustrated with reading. And so adjusting those things appropriately for your kid is going to be really important. But again, a lot of that comes from talking to other people and knowing a little bit about the curriculum that you're looking at, the program that you're looking at, and doing a lot of research. And just asking around. Different people use different curriculums, and we're not alone. I guarantee there's lots of homeschoolers that have used a variety of curriculums and can tell you why they like a certain one best.
Right, definitely. I think after our first podcast where we said like we're going to be talking about homeschooling, I mean, at least you had people message you, I had some people message me that just said like, hey, how do we get into this? Where do we begin? What do we look at? Here's my own assessment of my kids and what they can do. And what's your advice on digging into this and looking for extra or advanced or, you know, a little bit of help? And it was what I think we tried to manage the rest of that day. Like, okay, I'm giving this answer to this person and this answer to that person.
And we love talking to people about that. I mean, that's why we're doing this podcast, is because we enjoy the conversation about homeschooling. Like, you know, people are like, I got a question about homeschooling. I'm like, girl, I could talk to you all day about that. Like, what do you want to know? Because I'm excited about it. It's really cool and awesome. And other people that are excited about homeschooling too, like, I want to be your friend, you know, or let's go get some coffee together. Like, it just is something that I'm excited. Right.
Or at 6:56.
Yeah. So, you know, let's have a Zoom meeting, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. So I do
think... You get your coffee there, I'll get your coffee.
So it is something that, and I think most homeschooling parents are like that it's like they started out totally lost and not sure. And so they are happy to say like, man, I don't know what I'm doing either, but this is what I am doing, and talk to you. And that's totally cool and okay.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Sorry, the last thing I was going to say is to realize it's not too late. Like, yes, this is our first week of homeschooling because we want to start early this year because we have a baby coming. So I'm planning to take a really long maternity break from homeschool. So we decided to start earlier this year than we usually do.
And the weather has actually decided to just be rainy,
cool all of a sudden.
Rainy and cool.
So we figured we may as well just kind of jump into it.
We're stuck inside. Let's get some books read.
But you don't have to start. I mean, you don't have to start till September. You can homeschool all year round. You can do 3 or 4 days a week. So there's nothing that says like, if you are still thinking about your curriculum or you haven't decided yet what you're doing with your kids, that's okay. Because like we found out 2 weeks ago what the public school was doing, right? Like, so this is not a year that you need to feel like you're behind. Certainly.
Right. No, again, you know, like we said in the first one, like have grace for yourself, for your kids. Yeah. For anybody that you hear that's going to be taking this route, you know, just and give them some encouragement, you know.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's already been enough judging about if you should wear a mask or not. So let's let school be what it is and, you know, educate these children.
Encourage other people. Regardless. So if you have questions or concerns or you want to, you know, you need a homeschool friend, totally reach out. Like I said, if you want to talk about homeschooling, I would love to talk to you, maybe via Zoom, but at least for now. But, you know, we love to talk about it or, you know, share your questions or thoughts and comments or things that you would like to hear us talk more about or topics that we haven't gotten to yet. We definitely have more homeschooling in our, you know, conversation coming up, but certainly, you know, there may be other things that you want to hear or have us talk about that we haven't thought of. So please share those comments and opinions and thoughts.
Right? So hit the subscribe button, notifications, follow, all those things. And we will see you on the next podcast. Until the next adventure.
Bye.
Bye.